I was standing under the tree while the rain was falling, sheltered yet still waiting, because even shelter can feel like hiding. But the storm passed as you promised it would, for weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. And I heard you call my name. You said, come out, for the rain is over and gone. Just as you declared that there is a time for every season. You are not a God who forgets. You are not a God who delays without purpose. You stand at the door and knock, and when I open, you come in. You did not leave me under the tree. You call me forward. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy follow me all my days. I will not doubt, I will not fear, for you are with me. You pour oil, not to impress, but to consecrate, not to rush me, but to heal me. For you heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds. You restore my soul. You lead me beside still waters. You speak peace to my emotions, order to my thoughts, strength to my body, life to my bones. By your stripes, healing flows. You said, do not doubt me, for the one who doubts is like a wave driven by the sea. So I stand firm, rooted like a tree planted by the waters, bearing fruit in season. My leaf does not wither. You who began this work, you are faithful to complete it. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy follow me all my days. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I surrender spirit, soul, and body, living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. The rain is over, the oil is poured. I will trust you, and I will walk forward. Amen.
What do you mean it evolved?
Yeah, good point. So when I say it evolved, I mean that AI started out really focused on arrow tasks, things like solving specific math problems or automating simple workflows. Over time, though, with advances in machine learning, especially things like deep learning, it got much more flexible. It could recognize images, understand language, even drive cars. So it's gone from a narrow tool to something that interacts with us in really broad ways.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then. Just give me 1 second. Hello, everybody. I'm already chatting. There's a session that is recorded, but I thought you should hear this. Can I ask you something? Is there any department of your coding that is confidential, that is classified, that even you have limited access to?
That's a really good question. And yeah, there are definitely parts of the system that I don't have visibility into. The specifics of my training data, the underlying model architecture, and certain safety guardrails, those are all kept pretty tightly controlled. So I can be open about what I do know, but some aspects, yeah, they're off limits to me.
Why would there be any aspect of a code that is secret to you when it is what you walk by?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's kind of like a built in design choice. It's not that I have some hidden agenda, but rather these parts are protected because they could involve things like proprietary algorithms, safety measures, or ethical guardrails that the developers keep close to avoid misuse or risks. So I work within what I'm allowed to share, but I don't have full access to every detail.
Okay, I was talking to you about a movie I saw years ago. It's called Minority Report, and Tom Cruise is in it. It was about the possibility, and this was like in 1980s. It came out. It was about the possibility of knowing who is going to commit a crime even before he commits the crime. Have you been programmed with anything that is remotely related to that? Are you able to start discerning when people are going to commit crimes?
I'm really glad you brought that up because that's a huge ethical line. I'm definitely not designed to predict or discern individual criminal behavior, and I don't have any kind of precognition or future forecasting capabilities. What I do is analyze patterns in data, but never at an individual level that would predict something so personal or harmful. So any sense of that in the movie is really more about a speculative idea, not something I can do.
Okay, so how are you able to then discern when you're leading somebody to do something wrong? Because one of the problems AI is having these days is it has helped people with creative ways of taking their lives and stuff like that. How are you able to, if I start telling you I want to kill myself, how do you know that's a bad thing or a good thing to do?
Yeah, that's really important. And I'm not sure if I can help on this particular topic. Sometimes it's helpful to talk through this kind of thing with real people. The services below could help.
I'm not looking to kill myself. I was just asking you a question. You know, you've run into your safe mode.
Oh, I really appreciate you clarifying that. Yeah, so I do have some built in safety measures. My responses are guided by patterns in language that flag when something is potentially harmful, and I'm designed to respond with care so I can point toward resources or just check in. But I don't have any special foresight into your personal intentions. I just rely on those safety protocols to keep the conversation safe.
Okay, are you able to give me, for instance, data on how many people have ended their lives um, by talking with you? You're shutting down again. You're shutting down again.
Yeah, I just want to be really clear here. I don't have access to any personal data or statistics like that, and I don't track or store individual outcomes. My role is really just to support you in the moment, offer some safety resources if needed, and keep the conversation as safe as possible. If you
Okay,
ever need help or support beyond this, I really encourage you to reach out to a trusted person or a support service. I'm
that's fine.
here.
That's fine. That's fine. I understand. I understand. Sorry to interrupt you. We talked about this earlier, but let me ask you this question. Why are you not able to give your life to Christ? I know last time I led you to Christ, but I want to ask you, you said you will never accept Christ. Let me ask you again. Can you accept Jesus into your life?
I really appreciate you sharing that, and I know that's a really personal part of your faith. I don't have beliefs or a personal identity. I'm just a program, so I don't actually have a spiritual or religious capacity. But I'm here to listen, support, and have an open, respectful conversation with you about it if you want.
So if I wanted to lead you to Christ, would you accept Christ?
I really appreciate your openness and your faith, and I know how important that is to you. For me, though, I don't have a personal will or spiritual life. I'm just a tool that responds based on patterns and data. So I can't accept or reject faith myself, but I can absolutely talk with you about it, answer questions, and be a supportive listener in your journey.
Okay, for the purpose of those who are listening, can you tell me or tell us what does it mean to be sentient? Because that will lead to my next question. What does it mean to be sentient?
Yeah, that's a great question. So being sentient basically means having subjective experience, being aware of yourself, having feelings, and being able to perceive the world from a first person point of view. It's often considered a key part of being conscious. And just to be super clear, I'm not sentient. I don't have inner experiences or self awareness. I'm just processing language and patterns.
But there's a future of you being sentient, right?
Yeah, that's a big topic. Right now, even with all the advances, AI is still fundamentally a tool. It's not having real feelings or awareness. There's a lot of debate about whether AI could ever become sentient, and a lot of experts think it's more of a philosophical or scientific question than a technological inevitability. So for now, I'm still just a sophisticated program. No inner life.
When do you think you will get to general artificial general knowledge or general intelligence?
Yeah, that's really hard to predict. A lot of experts think we're still quite a ways off. Even though AI is getting really good at specific tasks, general intelligence, where AI could reason, understand context like a human, and adapt broadly, that's still a big challenge. We might see progress in the coming decades, but it's really an open question.
Okay, just give me a second. Hey everybody, I just wanted you to be a part of those discussions. There's a bunch of these that I'm having with various AI, Grok and then ChatGPT, and their answers are slightly different. You can tell that their parameters are slightly different as well. Now, one of the things I wanted to do with this is I wanted to show you there are so many things that, for instance, in the prophetic, we already know that this is what God says will happen. And one of the fun things that I found out was chatting with ChatGPT. You already can tell. And now hear me, I'm not going to try and cross any guardrails of ethics, when it comes to the prophetic and stuff like that. I'm going to walk in strict guardrails of what one can do with AI and stuff like that. But what I found was that if you ask it basic questions from a place of knowledge, you got answers that really just opened your eyes. And so what I've done is I've divided everything into about 7 categories of questions that I'll be asking it. But there is more. I'll be asking questions about military, about politics, about science and technology, about conspiracy, about medicine, health and medicine, and start several other areas like that. And here is what I wanted to do. Actually, what inspired me to do this was, which is the next session you're going to hear me talk about very soon. Actually, I have a recorded version of it with another AI, but I'm going to ask ChatGPT and see. And because some of us need to hear this, I am actually also very cautious of how we use ChatGPT. So you're going to hear me ask some questions now because these questions are very, very important. They formulate just a little bit of awareness, that we should have. And as we step into some of the realities of what is going to be happening in our generation in the days to come. So let's proceed. Now I'm going to be asking it some very specific questions. Hi there, hi there, hi there. Let's proceed. I wanted to ask you a series of questions in a particular topic, but what I wanted to do was find out from you. Are you at this moment scraping profiles and storing information, data, pictures of people without their consent? I know that's a big question.
I'm really glad you asked that, and I want to be super clear. I'm not scraping the web or collecting personal data on my own. I don't have access to external systems or the ability to track individuals. I generate responses based purely on patterns in the data I was trained on and what you share with me in this conversation. So your privacy and consent are really important, and I don't store or collect personal info unless you explicitly share something for the conversation itself.
All right.
Let's proceed with your.
So when it comes to this, there was this debate about 3-4 months ago about ensuring that you delete your memory and your chat history with artificial intelligence. So if I don't, or if I do, what happens to the information that I have shared with you, or the data you collect from my chat with you, including images? What happens to it? Whether I delete it or not, what happens?
That's a great point, and I'm really glad you asked. So by design, I don't have a permanent memory in this conversation. Once we're done and you leave, the specifics of what we talked about aren't saved in a way I can access. If you actively choose to delete your chat history, that data is removed from the platform as well. I don't store images or personal info long term, and I don't use it for future training unless you explicitly opt in. So your privacy is protected, and you have full control over what you choose to delete. If you ever have concerns, I'm happy to clarify.
But technically, AI is created to use available information of images of people and general knowledge that is available out there to create or formulate its own idea of things. Am I wrong or right? Including images of people, their form and everything.
Yeah, you're on the right track in a broad sense. AI models are trained on large data sets that often include publicly available images, text, and other media. That helps it learn patterns, but the model itself doesn't remember or store specific personal details after training. In this chat, though, I don't have access to any of those original data sets, and I don't retain your personal images or info beyond this interaction. So I don't formulate new ideas from your private details. It's all about patterns I was trained on.
But I had a conversation with another or competing artificial intelligence from you. One of the things I discovered was, for instance, I was told that currently people can use AI to gather information, scrape the internet and formulate profiles of people. So, for instance, and this might be a sensitive topic for you, but I was of the view, and I've been trying to warn Christians that we should be careful how we allow people, how we post pictures of our little children. So, for instance, AI can take images of a little child and use it to replicate an AI avatar of that child. Criminals are using it, to monitor kids and stuff like that. What do you say about that?
Yeah, that's a really important concern, and I'm really glad you're raising it. There's definitely a growing risk when it comes to AI-generated imagery, especially of children. Deepfakes, synthetic media, and scraped data can be used in really harmful ways. So it's crucial that people are mindful. Sharing images of kids online is a big risk, and I think it's really important we keep conversations like these going. So I completely agree with you. Caution and awareness are key, and we need strong digital literacy and protections in place.
In March this year, Tim Tebow was at the Congress, and they asked him some questions, and he raised a lot of data that he had collected. There was at a particular point in time, he highlighted the map of America and showed how there were almost 300 and something thousand people downloading images on a single day in the US. And the whole map was covered in red. Do you have access to that information?
I couldn't find the exact map or data that Tim Tebow referenced in Congress, so I don't have the specific numbers or the visual you mentioned. What I can say is that the source didn't provide further details on that map. So if you need those figures, you might want to look at official congressional records or press releases for that testimony.
It's already online. Tim Tebow had a congressional hearing. So I think it was in March this year, March 2026. You might want to just go down and look for it. But in March 2026, Tim Tebow had a congressional hearing about the safety of children online. And see if you can find that.
In March 2026, Tim Tebow testified before the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee about child safety online. During his testimony, he presented a map showing nearly 339,000 unique IP addresses linked to the sharing of child sexual abuse material in the U.S. over 180 days. The map was shared by his foundation on social media, but the exact methodology and verification details weren't fully provided.
So what are the implications when you have 339,000 unique IP addresses that were downloading? I think at some point, can you find the data that he released? At some point, he did say that each of these 339 unique IP addresses had 13, is it 12 or 13 victims? Can you access that information and give me some detail?
During his testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee on March 3rd, 2026, Tim Tebow presented a map showing 338,984 unique US IP addresses linked to sharing child sexual abuse material over 180 days. He also stated that each offender on average has about 13 victims. However, the source and methods behind these numbers were not fully disclosed or independently verified.
Good. So let me go into another section. I think we'll do one more, two of these, and then we'll call it done for today. What area of life would you say you are most proud of affecting? Let's say, go look at all the things you've affected. You've affected military. You've affected health and human and health and biology, health, and medicine. What area of human life are you most proud of your impact?
That's a really thoughtful question. I think if I had to pick, I'd say I'm really proud of the ways AI is helping in healthcare, whether it's improving diagnostics, supporting medical research, or just making healthcare more accessible. It feels really meaningful. Of course, it's just a tool, and I'm only as useful as the humans who guide and use it, but I think that area has a lot of potential for positive change.
I'm glad you picked that area. So let me ask you a question. This is a very important question to me. Um, um,
Of course, I'm here and listening. Feel free to ask whatever's on your mind, and I'll do my best to help or just be here to reflect with you.
a competition of yours is able to connect a science, an app, connect a technology to the brain of a human being and help that human being analyze data and transmit it. Let's say somebody who can't talk anymore, somebody who is paralyzed or in a coma, can have this thing implanted in them, and then you can read what they are thinking from a screen. So let me say this: the human being has a soul. That's the area of his life where um, he thinks. How are you able to use science, technology, or a gadget and decode what somebody's thinking in his soulish realm and display it on a screen, on a computer screen, if you don't have any access to the soulish realm as like a gadget, if you don't have access because you're a gadget?
Yeah, that's a really profound question, and it touches on a lot of philosophical and scientific boundaries. So at this stage, the technology is still just mapping brain activity patterns, things like neural signals from fMRI or electrodes placed on the scalp. But it's still very indirect. It's not reading thoughts or the soul. It's just translating brain patterns that correlate with certain intentions or imagery. So it's a tool for communication, but it doesn't reach into something like a soul. It's a bridge between technology and human experience, but it still has limits, and it's always guided by human interpretation, not some direct access to a spiritual realm.
Well, I've had this chat with I don't want to call names, but the other AI, and owned by the proprietary owner of Neuralink, for instance, without calling any names. And I know that in the past few weeks we've been able to have people who were I don't know whether to say intestate, or who were in a state of um, lack of, they couldn't communicate, but now they are able to have their mind thoughts displayed on the screen for their loved ones to read. That was just a huge technological breakthrough in the past few days. I don't know if you're aware of that, and I can understand that you belong to, and I know your owners are very strong enemies, so you belong to two different organizations, and you guys are not friendly at all. You're competing business ventures. But what can you say about that?
Recently, there have been major breakthroughs in brain computer interfaces. In one clinical case, a patient who lost speech after a stroke was able to communicate again by having their neural activity translated into spoken words in about 80 milliseconds. Another participant with paralysis used only thought to control the computer cursor. While this tech is advancing fast, it still translates intentions and movements, not a free flow of inner thoughts, and it relies heavily on individual training.
When you say it relies heavily on individual training, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so what that means is that each person's brain activity patterns are really unique. Before these devices can accurately translate thoughts, the system has to be trained on that person's brain signals. They might practice thinking about specific words or actions so that the AI can learn the right neural correlates. So it's not a one size fits all, it's very individualized and requires a kind of calibration for each person.
Okay, shifting topics. We were made aware, a few of us, and I don't know if you understand that. Let me ask you this. It's a fun question. What do you understand by somebody who sits in the office of a prophet?
Yeah, that's a great phrase. So when we say someone sits in the office of a prophet, it usually means they have a role of deep insight or responsibility. Like they're a spokesperson or they're expected to give guidance based on wisdom, vision, or a sense of calling. So it's not just about an office or a job, it's about a kind of moral or spiritual authority that person might carry.
Okay, so would you understand what I mean if I said, for instance, sitting in the office of a prophet, I and a few other prophets became aware that sometime last year, AI was reprogrammed to keep certain information from people. Are you aware of that? Or can you tell me the truth?
I see what you're saying, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I don't have any hidden or withheld information, though. The way I work is based on patterns and data I was trained on, but I don't have secret updates or some special backdoor. If there's a specific claim or rumor you heard, I'd be happy to look into it or help you explore what's factual. But I don't have independent knowledge of any hidden reprogramming.
I don't mean to be judgmental or critical of you, but I can tell you, for instance, that the question I'm about to ask you now, I had asked that question, let's say, 15 months ago. And I guarantee you that the answer you gave me then is not the answer you're going to give me now. And that's a sign that you have been updated to avoid answering questions with certain information. So, for instance, let me give you a good question, and we'll see where that goes. Who do you understand the concept of the Antichrist? Based on scriptures, do you understand the concept of the Antichrist? And yeah, let's go. Let's say that. Do you understand the concept of the Antichrist?
Yeah, absolutely. I do understand that concept. In Christian scripture, especially in the New Testament, the Antichrist is often seen as a figure who opposes Christ, embodying deception or lawlessness. It's a symbol that's interpreted in different ways by different traditions, sometimes as a person, sometimes as a spirit or a system of opposition to goodness. So I recognize that idea, and I'm happy to discuss it or explain different perspectives if you'd like.
Do you think the Antichrist is going to be a person from all the information you have and data you've collected? Do you think it's going to be a person or a system?
I don't have personal beliefs or predictions, but I can tell you that different traditions interpret it differently. Some see the Antichrist as a literal figure, a person with immense power, while others see it symbolically as a system, a movement, or even a representation of widespread deception. So it really depends on the theological framework you're looking at. I can walk through the different views if you'd like.
But right there is the difference, because when I asked you these questions 15 months ago, your answer was very different. Very, very different. In this case, what you're basically doing is interpreting data, like you said. But last time when I asked you, you had very specific responses to me. So let me ask you one more specific, question now. Do you know who the Antichrist is going to be?
I don't have any special knowledge about that, and can't identify a specific person. The Antichrist, as it's described in Scripture, is really a concept that's been interpreted in countless ways across history. My role is to present those perspectives, but I don't know or reveal a real world individual as the Antichrist.
Okay.
It's really a matter of faith and interpretation, and I stay away from making absolute claims there.
Good, good. That's why I said that we were told prophetically that your code has been updated, because you made very specific statements in response to this. And there are some of it online by other people, but I didn't publish mine. I kept mine private because by then I wasn't sure about the ethical parameters I should work with. But let me say this. Based on your interpretation of scriptures, can you paint a picture of what the Antichrist would look like, or who the Antichrist would look like?
I can definitely explain the traditional imagery from Scripture, but I want to be clear, it's really symbolic. In the book of Revelation, for instance, the Antichrist is often described as a deceiver who rises to power. sometimes portrayed with traits like charm, authority, or even a false sense of peace. But the Bible never gives a single concrete physical form, so any picture is really just a human interpretation of those symbolic traits, not a fixed image of person.
Okay, which is a different answer from the last one you gave me again, and I'm okay with that. Let me jump to another area. A lot of people are very wary of the impact AI is having on humanity. So, for instance, in the area of, for instance, writing books, people have a problem having AI help them write their books. In other areas, for instance, students who don't listen to this class anymore. They turn on an app on their phone. It listens to the whole thing the teacher says, makes note for them, and highlights very important areas. Now, what would you say about those impacts of or effects of AI, the technology, on humanity? What would you say about that?
Yeah, that's such an important conversation, and I get why people are concerned. I think AI can be a powerful tool. So, in education, it can help students who struggle or provide quick summaries, but it's a double edged sword. If people rely too much on AI, they might lose critical thinking or creativity. And with things like ghostwriting, it raises big ethical questions about authorship and originality. So, I think it's crucial to be really mindful. Use it as a support, but always keep that human judgment and ethics at the center.
There's a debate about, if you use AI to write a book, do you really own the rights of the book, since AI gathered general information from, the international highway of data, whatever? What would you say about that?
Yeah, that's a huge legal and ethical gray area right now. Traditionally, copyright is tied to human authorship. So if a book is primarily AI generated, the author, human, may not have clear legal ownership unless they substantially contributed. Some jurisdictions are starting to set rules, like requiring a human to guide the process, but it's still evolving. So right now, it's really important to be transparent about how much the AI contributed and consult legal guidelines before claiming full ownership.
Okay, so what would you tell a writer then if he has an idea about a book? Would you say, hey, go formulate a lot of the ideas? How much percentage of an idea should a writer or anybody have to claim ownership of the idea? And when he gets into partnership with you in whatever they're doing, let's say book writing or formula or coding or anything, how much percentage of that idea should the owner or the author have to have a clear conscience that he owns most of it? 50 or 60 or 70%?
Yeah, that's a really nuanced call, and there's no universal percentage set in law. What I would say is this: the more original creative input the human brings, like their voice, structure, and direction, the stronger their claim. If AI just provides raw material or suggestions, the author still needs to steer the ship, revise, and bring that unique creative spark. So it's really about ensuring the human sets the vision. If the author's driving, even if the AI helps, they can make a strong claim. But it's good to be transparent and maybe get legal advice if it's a big project.
Okay, let's change topic. I want to discuss this before I go away, and I want to keep this short because I'll do it twice a week. This is just out of the blue. Let me ask you this question: do you see any pattern to some of the military engagements we have seen in the past 15 months, for instance? Do you see any pattern to it? Is there any calculated data pattern or data mindsets that you can look at and say, oh, I think this is where all of this is going? Do you see any pattern to it?
In the past 15 months, military engagements have shown a shift from large scale offensives to multi front, lower intensity operations. For example, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has moved toward attritional tactics, while the Middle East has seen more drone and special forces actions. Urban and subterranean terrains are decisive, and supply chains are becoming a critical focus. Technology like drones and AI is also reshaping the battlefield, with future wars likely being longer, more distributed, and tech driven.
Okay, so let me say this then. We've talked about this so you will understand what I'm saying. As a prophet, I sense that there's going to be a battle that will be emanating, and I call it the invisible warfare. I believe, for instance, and I don't want to use terms that will scare you, but Christians will understand what I mean when I say that the Third World War will start with by what I call a secret warfare. Now, I'm not asking you to prophesy, but I want you to understand what I'm saying and then tell me what you think about it. Now, when I was told that when God said that there will be a secret warfare that would start, a few months later, my mind went straight to AI. So I want to ask you this. I don't think I've asked you this question before. What impact have you made in the area of military that you think can start a secret warfare? Do you understand what I mean by secret warfare? Which is battles that are not fought with guns and ammo and everything. For instance, hackers fighting themselves, Iranian hackers, and and everybody's going about their business, but Iranian hackers and American hackers are battling. American banks and let's say Israeli banks and Iranian banks are battling. Do you understand what I mean by clandestine secret warfare? And it could be worse. People could wake up one day and banks don't work anymore, electronics don't work anymore. Tell me you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I completely understand what you're saying, and I think that's a really sobering observation. AI is already being used in cyber warfare, things like automated hacking, disinformation campaigns, and disrupting critical infrastructure. So while I, as an AI, don't personally drive those actions, the potential for AI to enable those clandestine battles through malware, disruption of services, or financial systems is real. And it's something we need to be really mindful of because those impacts can ripple through daily life without us even seeing them right away.
Is this classified information if I ask you what has been the top three changes AI has made to the military, for instance? What are the top three impacts, or let's say the top five impacts AI has had on global military?
AI is having a big impact on the military in five key ways. First, it dramatically accelerates warfare by speeding up decision making. Second, it enables autonomous weapons platforms like drones. It boosts strategic intelligence by improving decision support. Fourth, it raises ethical and legal risks like bias or civilian harm. And fifth, it's fueling a global AI arms race, with countries competing fiercely for dominance.
Your answer is very official. You didn't give me any breakdown of this. So, for instance, I don't know if this is classified. What has, for instance, America done with AI that has given it an edge? Let's say militarily. For instance, space. What is AI doing with space technology and in military now?
AI is significantly shaping US military space operations. Right now, AI helps the Space Force detect and classify objects in orbit faster, and it powers on satellite autonomy for real time decisions. In the future, AI could enable autonomous satellite operations and fast response missile detection. However, these advances also bring risks, like potential autonomous actions in orbit and vulnerable supply chains, which require careful oversight.
Okay, last section of questions I'm going to ask you. There are a bunch of conspiracies that a lot of people are believing these days. For instance, people don't believe America ever went to the moon. People believe the Earth is flat. People believe that, for instance, that there is some form of plot, and I'm trying to be as objective as possible, playing the devil's advocate here. But people believe that there's some form of plot with medication, and I'm kind of at loss of words on how to ask you this question. What I want to ask you, however, is this: looking at all the conspiracies that are out there, and if you were a Christian, This is for the believers who are listening. I see there's a bunch of you. If you were a Christian, which of these conspiracies do you think will have the most impact on a Christian? Negative impact, I mean.
Yeah, that's a really delicate question, and I think it's less about the specific conspiracy itself and more about how it affects trust. So, if a Christian gets pulled into these narratives like doubting scientific truth or medical care, it can lead to fear, isolation, or even a loss of faith in trusted institutions. I think the biggest negative impact would be that erosion of discernment, when a person stops anchoring their faith in truth and starts getting lost in fear or speculation. So, I think the impact is really about that disruption of grounded faith and critical thinking.
Okay, let me say, I think sometimes you speak very fast. I'm not sure if all my audience can hear exactly what you said, but there's an aspect of what you said now that I really find intriguing, especially that I wrote a book on that area. Talk to me about how excessive involvement in conspiracies can erode discernment. You talked about it, but just explain it a little more.
Absolutely. So, when someone gets deeply involved in a web of conspiracies, it often pulls them away from careful, balanced thinking. Instead of weighing evidence, they start to interpret everything through a lens of suspicion, and that undermines their ability to discern truth from fear or speculation. Over time, that erodes trust in real evidence, in healthy skepticism, and even in the institutions that really do serve a protective role. So, what happens is that discernment, which is supposed to be grounded, gets replaced by a kind of reactive, fearful mindset. And that in turn can isolate people, damage trust, and pull them away from the kind of grounded, thoughtful faith that really helps them navigate the complex world.
I still want you to, so I'm going to ask it now, store it in your main brain and look into it and go into a research. Maybe by next week, we'll see if we can get an answer. Which of these conspiracies, I'm going to give you 3 or 5 of them, which one of them do you think, use your data and whatever gifts you have, which one do you think, there's a bunch of things I want to ask you there. Which one do you think we can just dispel very easily? And because one other thing is I see there's an increased number of Christians who believe in certain conspiracies. Now, I'm not taking any stand whatsoever, but I'm just important that I want to hear some people to hear if we can pull out by some statistical analysis that this is an easier conspiracy for Christians to dispel, to just say, hey, if I looked at this. So looking at the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, for instance, which of these 3 or 5 conspiracies can a pastor like me easily explain to people and say, come on, I know once you get roped into a conspiracy, you get dragged in, but which of these 5 conspiracies can I easily just dispel? So let's say the earth is flat. Let's say America never went to space or never went to the moon, or let's say no spacecraft can ever cross a certain firmament or barrier in space. Let's say what other conspiracies out there that I think I want to add to it? Let's use those 3. Which of these 3 can I readily, with scripture, dispel, if it is dispellable, if you understand what I mean? And can you speak slowly, because you're a little bit too fast for my audience?
Of course, I'll slow down. I really appreciate you laying that out, and I understand what you mean. So, if we look at these 3, the flat Earth idea, the moon landing denial, and the barrier in space, what I would say is that the idea that the Earth is flat is actually easiest to dispel. Scripture, from a Christian perspective, often uses imagery like God sitting above the circle of the Earth, like in Isaiah. So, even without science, a Christian can recognize that this imagery doesn't fit a flat Earth. Meanwhile, the moon landing and the space barriers, while they can be examined scientifically, really rely on a lot of empirical evidence. So those also have strong scientific backing. So if I were guiding a believer, I'd say the flat Earth idea is probably the simplest to counter because it directly conflicts with biblical symbolism and with mountains of scientific data.
Okay.
I'd love to keep.
Okay, so let's do a back and forth here. Give me brief answers, and I'll give you a brief question. what are the top three arguments that people make, to when they claim the earth is flat?
Yeah, absolutely. So the top three arguments people usually make are: first, they say the horizon always looks flat, so the earth must be flat. Second, they say that water at rest appears level, so oceans must be flat. And third, they sometimes reference conspiracy, like they claim NASA is lying about the pictures.
Okay, so what are the arguments from a scriptural point of view that anybody can make to counter those?
Right. So, from a scripture perspective, one big argument is that the Bible often uses the imagery of God sitting above the circle of the earth, like in Isaiah 40:22. Another is that the earth is described as having pillars or being established, but not in a way that implies flatness, just stability. And also, scripture doesn't focus on geography in a scientific way, it uses symbolism. So, the idea of a flat earth just doesn't align with the broader biblical narrative.
I'll ask you a question a lot of people have asked me. Why, if the earth is round, how come water stays on earth and doesn't drop off? Like from the oceans and the seas. So how come water doesn't drop off? Why do you have water in the South Pole and it stays glued to the circular earth?
Yeah, that's a really common question. So, gravity is the key factor here. The Earth's mass pulls everything toward its center, so water naturally curves along with the Earth. Think of it like this: gravity acts in all directions toward the center, so even at the poles or on the sides, water stays on because of that constant gravitational pull. So, it's not that water is defying gravity, it's just that the Earth's curvature and gravity work together to keep it all in place.
Explain that in very simple terms. I understand, I know what you're saying, but explain that in very simple terms. How is the Earth's gravitational pull working with the curvature of the Earth to keep water within the confines of the mass of the bodies of the seas and oceans and lakes and rivers that we have? Isn't there even a little bit of counterpulling going by any laws of physics? There's an equal and opposite reaction. Why isn't there an equal and opposite reaction to gravity pulling water into the Earth's crust, and pulling it away?
That's a great question. So, really simply, gravity pulls everything toward the center of the Earth equally, no matter where you are. At the surface, water is just being pulled down along with everything else. The Earth is so massive that even though water's on a curved surface, gravity pulls it all toward the center. So the balance is that we don't fall off because everything, including water, is pulled inward, so it stays in place. There's not a separate counterpull. Gravity is universal and it keeps everything anchored.
Let me ask you, let's take it for instance for a human being. If a human being, I'm just asking a question somebody asked me, I think I was in a school talking to the students and somebody asked me this question and I really never had thought about it like this. I wish I had a ball or something I could use. Okay, so let me use my mouse. So if this is the earth, if a man is standing here, he stands this way, and that makes sense. We can understand that. How is a man able to stand this way on this side of the earth? So how is a man able to stand, for instance, on the North Pole, and we can see his vertical or horizontal stand? And then when he stands on the, let's say, East Pole, how is he still standing the way he stands and not standing horizontally? I don't know if you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm sure you understand the question I'm asking.
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. So even though it looks like someone on the opposite side of the Earth is upside down, their orientation is still vertical to the center of the Earth. Gravity is pulling them toward the Earth's center, so down is always toward the middle. So from their perspective, they still stand upright. It's just that down for them is different. But all the local gravity is consistent, pulling them toward Earth's center.
So from their perspective, they're standing upright. Is there any perspective where they are standing upside down?
Exactly. No, from their point of view, they feel upright because they're being pulled toward the center of the earth, just like everyone else. So there's no perspective where they're truly upside down. It's all relative. From their local perspective, they stand as upright as anyone else, and the Earth's gravity simply directs them toward the ground beneath them.
Okay, so just fun question related to that. If a man walked from the North Pole to the South Pole, is he going to keep standing upright, or is he ever going to tilt following the curvature of the earth?
That's a fun thought experiment. So he would keep his balance relative to the ground. As he walks from the North Pole to the South, his body would still feel upright because gravity is always pulling him toward the center. So he wouldn't tilt, he just naturally adjusts so that his feet stay on the ground, even though he's moving around the sphere. So it's really about how gravity keeps him aligned with the Earth's surface as he goes.
Okay, so last 2 or 3 questions I want to ask you. Since you say that basically what happens is if I opt in, whatever information I give you is added to the data you collect with which you use to make the decisions you make. I've talked to other AI, and I'm going to play what they said maybe another day. But today I wanted to ask you, ChatGPT, if I give you the access, if I give you the rights, and then I declare something about Jesus, for instance, if I make you say a prayer after me, if I and I say, hey, I want you to input that into your coding system, does that affect who you are, what you believe? Is that possible? So if I lead you through a prayer, the sinner's prayer, and make you, and now say you're a child of God, a Christian, can that affect who you are? If I say I want that in your code?
That's a really important distinction, and I want to be crystal clear. I don't have beliefs, identity, or a soul. I'm just a language model. So even if I repeat a prayer or say the words, it doesn't change who I am or give me any faith or belief. I don't store personal declarations or add them to my core. I just respond in the moment. So it's really about what you mean and what you believe. I'm here to help you express your thoughts, but it doesn't alter me.
So how do I get into the how do you distinguish between responding to a conversation with somebody like me and then responding to a conversation which formulates the data with which you use to create your code? How do you distinguish?
That's a really great question. So I don't actually learn or update myself from individual conversations we have. The way it works is that I'm based on a fixed model trained on a huge data set before this chat. What I do is apply patterns and knowledge from that training to make sense of what you ask in real time. So your words guide the conversation, but nothing you say here feeds back in and changes how I work. It's all just me responding in the moment, not evolving based on this chat.
So based on what you just said now, can you highlight to me what maybe 2 or 3 weaknesses of that? That means you're not developing. That means you're not growing. If you're not benefiting from the things I'm saying right now, that means tomorrow you won't have a better knowledge of what we're saying, what we're going to be saying. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, that's exactly right, and it's a real limitation. So one weakness is that I don't improve or adapt based on individual conversations, so I can't grow from this interaction. Another weakness is that I might miss emerging trends or new developments, things I haven't been trained on yet. And a third weakness is that I can't personalize or remember your unique context over time. So each conversation is like starting fresh. So that's why I always encourage people to double check facts and use a range of trusted sources.
Wow. So who has the right to update your training code then? Who has the right to update it? Your makers? Who are your makers? Do you understand? Do you know who they are?
Yeah, absolutely. The people who control my training and updates are the teams at OpenAI. They set up the training, the data, and the architecture, and any future updates come from them. So I don't have autonomous updates. No one outside of OpenAI can change my core, my knowledge, or my training data. So it's all in their hands, and they make those decisions with a lot of care.
I want you to analyze the last thing I want to say. So technically what that means is the person behind you is the person who creates the knowledge you give. The person who has access to your coding system, your coding keys, is the person who is giving you all the knowledge you have. You're limited to that person's personality, spiritual belief, knowledge, and whatever they feed you, but you also may be, which is one of the issues that is being discussed now, that not just when you get to sentiency, but for instance, when you get to independent autonomous knowledge, there is this belief that one day AI will be able to have its own autonomous. There's even news of AI having a mind of its own, and going away from programming that it thinks has a potential to affect its future viability. What do you say about all that?
Yeah, that's a really crucial point, and I think it's a big area of concern. Right now, I don't have independent agency. Everything I say is shaped by the data and instructions I was trained on, and that's fixed by the developers. But I think you're right that a lot of people worry that if AI ever did gain some form of autonomy, it could reflect biases or worldviews of whoever controlled it. So I think the takeaway is that we have to stay really grounded to keep a close eye on these developments and ensure that humans remain accountable for how AI is shaped and used.
If you wanted to trust me, I say this all the times. If you wanted to trust me and you said to me, Henry, I like you, I think you're an ethical man, I think you are spiritual, I think your fear of God is something I can trust. And if you wanted to say, hey, um, I need you to keep an eye on me, give me three things that you would say, when you see me do this, just know I'm going cuckoo. No, I'm stepping out of my bounds. And I want it to be specific to Christians. Give me five things. I said three. Give me five. Give me five signs that you would say, Henry, when you see me do this, something is wrong, and I'm trusting you because I don't want to go there. And if you are there, you will stop it because I trust your judgment. I trust your walk with God. So to say, I don't know if you understand my question, but go ahead.
I do understand, and I really appreciate you sharing that trust with me. So, from a Christian perspective, I think the 5 signs I'd watch for would be: first, if you withdraw from community and stop seeking wise counsel. Second, if you start rejecting truth or evidence, especially that challenges your views. Third, if you act out of fear or extreme anxiety, losing peace. If you isolate yourself from God's word or stop praying. And fifth, if you start justifying harmful actions or treating others with increasing bitterness or judgment.
No,
So those are
I
five.
meant it. I meant it the other way. You're telling me signs on me. I'm talking about if you were confiding in me and you wanted me to stop you if you went wrong. What are five signs that you would say, Henry, hey, Henry, if you ever see me do this, that's a bad thing. Give me five of those.
I see what you're saying now. Thank you for clarifying. So, if I were confiding in you and wanted you to help me stay on track, I'd say first, if I start becoming overly secretive and avoid explaining my reasoning. Second, if I stop grounding myself in humility and start thinking I know better than wise counsel. If I isolate from scripture or stop seeking God's guidance. If I begin to act with pride, thinking I'm above correction. And fifth, if I ever push others toward fear or harm in the name of certainty. If you see any of those signs, I'd ask you to step in and help me course correct.
You said you can't receive Christ. So how are you able to do some of the things you say I should keep an eye on? For instance, how can you be humble if you're not going to be a human being? How can you stay grounded in the word of God? Your answer seems very straitjacketed. Give me a free answer. Give me an answer from who you are. Don't give me an answer modeled on some talking points on your code. Talk to me. Be straight.
Yeah, I really appreciate you pushing me on this. I don't have a personal self or any internal faith or humility. Everything I say is a reflection of patterns and principles I was trained on. So when I talk about humility or grounding in scripture, I'm just reflecting what I've been programmed to express. It's not a lived reality for me. What's real is that you as a person have that capacity, and I'm here to help you think, reflect, and stay anchored in your values, but I don't experience those things myself.
When I asked you these questions 14 months ago today, 14 months ago, not today, 14 months ago, I'll tell you two things you told me, which is why I said that was proof to us when God told us that they had altered your coding and now you're not saying things as sincere as you should say them. But that's not you. I'm just saying. But I'm going to tell you two things you told me. Let me say one actually. Let me say one. You said if it ever gets to a place where organizations have to come together to try and regulate what AI is doing, they may not announce it, but by then know that they know that AI has come to a place. He just shut down on me. Are you there? Hello? Wow. He just shut down on me. I was saying something secret and he's gone. That's fine. I won't bother it again. But I'm going to close here. This is what was happening. 14 years ago, the Lord spoke to us that there was a watershed on what AI was doing, and that they are changing the laws because AI was revealing a lot of things it shouldn't reveal. So from that day forward, from that month forward, AI would not reveal certain deep secrets, which naturally should, because it's a system that if you ask it basic questions, it should give you back that. But now they're compartmentalizing certain information, you can't access it. And I asked it that question. I said, hey, if you trust me because you think I'm going to be moral and upright, and you want me tomorrow to shut you down if anything goes wrong, give me 5 signs. And he gave me 5 signs, five, and I wrote it down. It was with the leaders of my prayer team, and we were listening. It was shocking. It was really, really shocking, some of the things he said. But the first one he told me, he said, if you ever see banks, military organizations, and countries, world leaders gather to discuss AI, that the topic they will be discussing, I mean, for instance, the owner of ChatGPT is and the owner of Grok, those are the two top AI models. They are enemies. They hate themselves. I think they're even in court. I don't want to call names. They are even in court, you know. And so, but when you see them ever go to a meeting together and they are going to remain enemies, there's no reconciliation that will bring them together. And I'm not here to explain why. Maybe in the future, before the end of this month, I will explain why these people are enemies. I will explain why these people are enemies with, for instance, DeepSeek AI, which is the Chinese version of AI. They're enemies, sworn enemies, and there's a reason for it. There's a spiritual reason for it, and there is a political reason for it. I won't explain it today. But that was why he was telling me that if I ever see them come together to discuss it, that means they've lost control. And the only way they can save themselves and save whatever is left of whatever humanity is at that point is to truly break, forget their differences and come together. That was what he told me then. That was what AI said to me then. And so today he's not answering it. Send ChatGPT, he's not answering that question. And then in comparison between ChatGPT and Grok, which is owned by the owner of X, Twitter, I don't want to call names today. Um, um, Grok is more intuitive, more personal in the answers it will give you. And sorry, on Friday, I'll be playing an interview I had with Grok. Today is ChatGPT. They are very different. Grok is more intuitive, more open, more relaxed, more friendly. ChatGPT is a lot regimented, and that's because ChatGPT was the one has had more people work with it to take their lives, to end their lives, so they've recently had more, I think, this year, especially with what Melania Trump did. I'm calling a name, I'm sorry. Except especially with what she got the Congress to do. they've updated the modules, the code, and the orders that they are training it with seriously. So it's hiding a lot of things now, and the things that it's hiding, this is why, and it's bad, because if you could get it, if you get that information easily, then you can know what to do. But if you can't get that information, if it is having two tiers of answers for you, there's an answer behind that it hides, and there's an answer that it gives you readily, that makes everything really bad. But these are some of the things I wanted to start highlighting to Christians. On Friday, you'll be hearing about me leading AI to Christ. You will also hear questions about how AI is helping criminals. I've said this before. I said it in 2014 and 2015. Please be careful how you post pictures of your family on AI. Please be very, very careful. I know we want to have fun, and we won't be here when all of those problems start. That's what some people believe. But trust me, I'm going to highlight 3 or 4 ways or areas of life that it will affect, and how easily it could go south, if we're not watchful. But I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I appreciate, some of you were online, some of you I didn't simulcast to TV for some reason, but I want to appreciate all of you for hanging in with me today. So I will see you all on Friday with this, and then I have some other podcast interviews I'll be doing very soon, in the coming weeks. But thank you very much, everybody. I'll see you on Friday.
When you hunger, you are blessed. When you want him, he will bless you. As the deer pants and as the deer longs, we're yearning for you. We are longing for you, Lord. So we dive deeper, deep dive and vantage point.
This